Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We're a full service CX and UX agency, and today is episode 112 UX and Evangelism Undoing What's Undoing UX. It's May 24th, 2021, and today I will be sharing with you a Medium article that I recently wrote on this topic, and I'm hoping that the live audience will join in with some of their commentary and some of their questions that I will check as I go along. Because I really want everybody to be a part of this and maybe turn it into a little bit more of a conversation. So my Medium article is easy to find. It's on Medium. And let's see, hopefully that, yeah, there we go. There's me and the chat room. And let me fix some of these windows. And hello from Paul. Paul says it's already superior content. Thank you, Paul. Not biased at all. So you can, of course, find this on Medium. It's called UX and Evangelism, Undoing What's Undoing UX. So I am going to read it out loud, which should be especially helpful for someone who hasn't read it yet. But I really do want people's comments and questions along the way. I'm watching the chat room. I'm watching LinkedIn and YouTube. So I hope that everybody will chime in with anything that they would like to react to as I go. So here we go. Also, I've opened it in a private browser so that you won't see all the highlighting and the people whose names are on the highlighting, which I normally see when I'm logged in. So this will look unhighlighted, but it's been very highlighted. So here we go. We need to say this out loud. CX and UX practitioners at all levels, even experts and managers, are hired into companies that don't understand what we do. We're then put on teams and projects where they don't understand what we do. Everybody else wants to do what we do, or what they think UX is. They think our work is easy and anybody can do it. We wanted so badly for them to sit with us at lunch and play with us at recess that some people came out with books and models that took CX and UX in the wrong direction. We supported and tried to use those, thinking that it would get everybody to care about design. We wanted to evangelize UX. We didn't notice how weird that made us look. We didn't notice that 0 other teammates are running meetings about how great they are, how important their tasks are, how they need to be a larger part of the process, etc. We didn't even seem to notice or care that our teammates hate being dragged into UX evangelism meetings. So much for our empathy. We took off our critical thinking hats. Some of us didn't realize how our own choices and actions might reinforce the misunderstandings around CX and UX. We didn't imagine the outcomes of every book, model, and workshop that reinforces that everybody can design the product. We didn't notice that no other domain at our company holds workshops or exercises like we do, and how not workshopping is part of how they retain their power in their own domain. Marketing doesn't hold days of workshopping around what should our email campaigns be. We would respect marketing less if they interrupted our work to have us join in that. We'd probably think they were somewhat incompetent and can't seem to do their work without stopping everybody else's work. They'd seem codependent, incapable, and they'd send the message that anybody can do marketing's work if we just all got together and took a stab at it. We thought that if we gave up our power, made everything a workshop, and democratized, people would care about design or respect us. You can't evangelize that UX is an important specialty and then get everybody in a room to guess at what's supposed to be your work. You teach them that UX guesses at stuff and can't even do that themselves. You teach them that we need to stop everybody else's work so that we can do team exercises and group tasks and guesses. You teach them that if you can fill out some frameworks and canvases, you are really caring about users and designing the product. You'd never hang designs at your desk and ask people to vote on their favorite, but you run workshops where customers are barely involved, the problem is barely understood, and we vote on a winning solution. Without our critical thinking hats on, we didn't notice that no other domain at our company is a democracy. Engineering doesn't invite us to decide on the back-end architecture. QA doesn't ask what we think about their automated testing. Product doesn't want us to join a 3-day sticky note festival to come up with a prioritized product roadmap. They all collaborate where they want, but they mostly do their own work and make their own decisions. They keep their power and autonomy. Quickly from the chat room, hi Sylvia. Paul says, OMG, you're saying the quiet stuff out loud. Yup, and there's a lot more of it. So back to the article. When crappy books came out that ran mostly or completely against customer centricity, we stayed quiet. And I don't know why, considering that we are change agents, advocates, and mini lawyers. Awful books came out saying that you don't really need UX and certainly not specialists. Just get everybody into group exercises and team workshops so you can democratize UX and have everybody be a part of it. You'll surely show people the value of design by having everybody do workshop exercises. Figure out what customers want by releasing iterations of guesses and then surveying how they liked that. When non-startups wanted to design their product or innovate by holding design sprints, we said nothing. Teams held workshops to design the product, sometimes without CX or UX, and we said nothing. Designing the product was supposed to be our job, but when they took it away from us to do design by committee workshops, the people writing the books and selling the training told us it would be good for us. And with critical thinking hats off, we believed that. When engineering took over processes and organizations to be agile, we said nothing. When they removed us from the process, we said nothing. After all, we're following this new agile religion. It says you don't really need UX or just have an engineer read a UX book, and we said nothing. Just release something minimally viable and learn after customers struggle with it if it's good or not. That was hard to fight since people at our companies were paying a lot to be trained and certified to put customers last while pretending to care about their satisfaction. I'll tell you later how our best bet is to shift away from evangelism and fight a battle on this front. Kayleen says, starting Monday with fire. We press like and share on total bullshit that would be obvious if we kept critical thinking hats on and considered the possible outcomes. I have watched a pseudo guru out there push everybody's a designer for years. He wants to come and train your company to reach his model's highest level of UX maturity, which is when everybody is fluent in UX design. We applauded him at events. We invited him back. We didn't consider the possible outcomes if everybody at our company is a designer or believes they are fluent in UX design. We didn't consider the outcomes of let's teach our teammates to be better at our jobs. We didn't notice that none of our teammates are training us to be better at their jobs. Critical thinking hats on. That's not the highest level of UX maturity by anybody's model except his. Are we sure we want everybody at our jobs to imagine that they are fluent in UX? What does UX fluency look like? Will they still need to hire us? Or can product managers fluent in UX design the product? And if his training and speaking are so fantastic, why do we still have to prove the value of UX? Where is all of that amazing maturity leading to true customer centricity? Then he sends an email out to his mailing list that incredulously asked, why do we still have to prove the value of design? Sir, you are directly responsible for some of the reasons why we still have to prove the value of design. You have toured conferences telling them everybody's a designer, and the highest level of maturity is when everybody is trained by you to be fluent in UX. Put your critical thinking hats on. Listen to what this guy and crappy books and models are saying. Stop inviting them to speak at your company, train your teams, or present at your event. Stop pressing like, commenting, and sharing. Let this crap sink to the bottom of the algorithm ocean. Then we told each other we need to evangelize UX. Thing 1, too late. You should have spoken up when your company made moves that undid user-centered design. You should have spoken up when you were put on a team that didn't know what you did and tried to do your work. You should have said something when your company wanted to design the product through design sprints and other methods originally crafted for startups with nobody working in UX or product. Okay, maybe some or all of this happened before you got to that company. I understand. You weren't there to speak out. Thing 2, if you were around when the crappy books, models, and training came out, you should have spoken out against them. People have said to me, oh yeah, Lean UX is a terrible book and their model is completely not viable. I filled the margins with angry notes. But they said nothing when the book came out. They didn't leave a bad Amazon review. That book got adopted by Safe Agile and Scrum.org as how UX is done. Congratulations! You're stuck doing the non-viable model as your daily job because engineering is pushing it on us. You'd hope that if Safe and Scrum.org had seen hundreds of angry reviews on Amazon, they'd be like, whoa, this is not the model to use. But the reviews are nearly 100% great, mostly left by non-UX roles. Thing 3. If you jumped on the design sprints, design thinking workshop bandwagon, you definitely can't hold workshops where anybody can do UX and preach that UX is special, important, and done by specialists. Those two are opposites. Sorry, taking a drink there. Solomon's here. Good to see you. Solomon says, I've always been surprised by how many important decisions haven't been made by the time code is being written. That's a great point. Why are we still seeking alignment? Continuing with the article, then how do we raise CX and UX maturity? In my April 2021 article, 2-year prediction for CX UX professions, which we did last week, I think is episode 111, I explained that UX maturity is customer centricity. If your team doesn't care about customers or likes to guess about them, your org is typically low maturity. When your company truly cares about customers and believes in taking time for good qualitative research and feeding those insights into strategies, initiatives, products, projects, etc., then it's high maturity. Maturity is really customer centricity. Either we are researching, architecting, designing, testing, building, etc., completely around and for customers, or we're doing something fast, cool, startup-y, guest-based, workshopped, fix it later, etc. Kayleen says, a few weeks ago, I actually read the Agile Manifesto principles and my brain actually melted. Yeah, the Agile Manifesto principles are generally good. Did your brain melt because they were good and they're not being done or because they were bad? Back to the article. You can't make someone grow up faster, thinking about maturity. Part of the problem is that we can't make anything mature faster than it's on track to mature. People, fruit. But we can try to make a company that relies on paying customers care more about having more and happier paying customers. We have a true shot at that, and we can show that the road to customer centricity is paved with CX and UX, not with guesses and workshops. You have to shift away from everything that accidentally or on purpose makes it look like UX is easy and can be done by anybody. I call design thinking, design sprints, lean UX, which is neither lean nor UX, workshops, design by committee, democratization, and the like, aspirologies. They aspire to be methodologies and approaches, but are more bad than good and don't deserve to be called methodologies. You can't evangelize UX while saying, doing, or supporting anything that makes people less likely to understand what we truly do. You can't facilitate, support, plan, or run aspirology workshops or exercises, and then try to evangelize the specialty, importance, and depth of CX or UX. Aspirologies evangelize themselves, normally as the way to do UX faster and cheaper. If you are facilitating that, you are training everybody that these short exercises and workshops are the best way to do UX. User-centered design, UCD, isn't design thinking, design sprints, or lean UX. UCD and HCD require that specialists and or experts use a multi-phase process with varying tasks and methodologies. We strategically choose the right tasks and approaches for our project. We undertake these with science, technique, and specialized skill. Design thinking, design sprints, lean UX, and other aspirologies and workshops are full of tasks that anybody can do. You're not judged on how well you defined the problem. Nobody judges if your ideation were viable ideas, accessible, or used best practices. Nobody checked your prototyping method. Testing was probably not done with rigorous recruiting or research study design. So, aspirologies are usually theater and guessing, but they are risky and often wasteful for our company. Back to the chat room. Kayleen says, brain melted because they're the opposite of what I see. Yeah, the Agile Manifesto principles are mostly good, but they're not happening. Paul says, science. Back to the article. You have to talk about money and time. The waste from guessing, the waste from building guesses, releasing guesses, supporting guesses, the costs to train people on crappy product, fixing it later, etc. I have hundreds of slides on this. This is the short version. You can't talk about, don't you care about customers? They might not care. They might not have pity, sympathy, empathy, or compassion. And we shouldn't spend our time trying to change coworkers to feel any of these more or at all. I will happily accept time and budget from someone who is unable to feel with or for the customer, except that they might have no sympathy or care and are driven by money and other KPIs. When you evangelize or push against that, this is when you hear that UX isn't speaking the business's language. My 2021 conference presentation and keynote for non-CX UX teammates is called Improving Agility by Using Customers' Definitions of Quality and Done. I did this live on my ad-free YouTube channel. Please check it out and definitely share it around your company. It's also aimed at non-CX UX teammates, managers, and leaders. Quick note to everybody, this was an episode from a few weeks ago now, but I've already rewritten it. So I'm going to do it again, though not as a live thing. I'll pre-record it and I'll put it up and I'll just tell people looking at that episode there's already a newer version. So this article presents two key pieces of advice on how to undo what's undoing us. One is shifting our reliance on an approach to workshops, more on that later. And the other is, when working with product engineering, marketing, and others, look at old and current projects. Realize how not agile and not lean we are, and how much time, money, and resources we are wasting on guesses, sometimes called minimum viable products. If we can start to show people the wasted time, budget, training, customer support, customer trust, online ratings, stock prices, and more, then we have a shot to explain that delivering a better product the first time would be the right path to take. Then we start to explain how CX and UX are your partners in planning and delivering a better product the first time. People think the secret to saving CX or UX is metrics and proving ROI. That's good, but it has to be part of a larger plan. You also have to show what's going wrong when the customer support experience is poor, not right, or needs to be fixed. Customer experience, I said, right? Before you can show our ROI, you will probably have to show the negative return on investment from projects that experienced some failure. What did we burn on those? Was anybody held accountable? Did we learn from that lesson, or did we do it all again in the next release? We also have to remember to not be gaslit by anybody saying that if CX or UX, who wants to do user-centered design, and this project is going to need R before D, research before design and dev, then that's waterfall. We have to not be sucked in by people who negatively frame our work as big design up front. Magically, other teams that need planning, research, modeling, estimating, etc. up front aren't treated this way. They mostly do that outside of sprints. Everybody just understands it's part of the process, and nobody gives it a name designed to sound like something awful we must avoid. Without our critical thinking hats on, we agreed that CX or UX upfront was bad. And it's not. Doing our work ahead of time is not some sort of process killer. It's the way successful companies have worked for years, and many still work. You probably admire Apple. Your company probably admires Apple. Apple spends squillions of dollars every year on research and development, and R before D. Your company read The Lean Startup and decided it would be really cool to rush out some guesses and find out weeks or months later if people like it or not. I'm not saying Apple is perfect, but companies that deeply research customers, the market, technology, human behaviors, tasks, and needs before deciding what the features will be tend to have very different products and services than those rushing guesses out. We don't even emulate the companies we admire. We emulate startups, which fail at least 90% of the time. So Paul in the chat room is saying, I tell my current cohorts, yeah, but you can't prove that feeling. They spin around like Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They flip out when I introduce contextual inquiry. Thank you, chat room. Okay, continuing with the article. This means the next step for anybody who cares about the future of CX and UX would be to start undoing what's undoing us. Stop doing aspirology workshops, no more design thinking exercises, design sprints, or team guessing adventures. If once in a while you want to brainstorm with others and collect ideas, great, but stop having them guess at screens and calling that designing the product. I like to collect ideas in the form of user stories, and I don't let anybody sketch screens or interfaces in my rarely run workshops. People have asked me how can they get away from aspirologies when their teammates find them fun and now expect that UX work will be done by everybody in a room with sticky notes and sketched screens. It's going to be too much of a shock to tell people those are fake UX or we're not doing them anymore. You will have to phase them out. I would phase in my Delta CX ideation workshop. Short version, you spend hours showing the qualitative research you have, quotes, video clips, personas, task analysis, optimized task flow, etc. You don't stab at those as a group craft exercise. Qualified experts create those ahead of time after having done one or more proper observational and/or interview studies. During this block of time, you're also introducing whatever problem or challenge around which we will ideate. Everybody then gets different amounts of time in different rounds to come up with high-level concepts and ideas that address the problem. Nobody sketches screens or anything else in these workshops, ever, not even you. Ideas are described and stay high level. I like to ask for them in the form of user stories so that people stay customer focused, but any non-drawn ideas would be great. Our store could notify customers that there will be deliveries in their area tomorrow and give them a chance to place an order. Well, now that's a neat idea to help a store get more home delivery orders while they're in the neighborhood. But we didn't have to draw that. There are a zillion ways that can end up looking and working. The important thing is to get the idea generated, documented, and give that coworker credit for it. We can work on its exact execution later, outside of the workshop. While you are still stuck doing design, if you saw a baby bottle go by, that was because Paul said, fun, I'm not running a daycare here, and Kayleen put up a baby bottle. While you are still stuck doing design sprints, tell them you are trying different versions of design sprints, which really do exist. I'm not making this up. You might be doing design sprints version 1 right now, 5 days. Empathize, define the problem, ideate, prototype, test. Design sprints version 2 ends, for the full list of attendees, after ideation. Experts prototype and test. Great way to start teaching people that experts prototype and test. It's not a fun craft project for everybody to try out. It's not something anybody can do, at least not well. Design Sprints version 3 requires that qualitative research be done ahead of time so that people aren't guessing at customer journey maps, personas, etc. Observational research and contextual inquiry are done by experts beforehand. Documents, artifacts, etc. are made by experts beforehand. You now have two real variations that teach people that some of this stuff really should be done by experts and specialists. This can start bringing back some of the understanding and respect you're hoping to get. This starts to create the boundaries you wish you had. Show in a meeting the difference between the prototype and testing the design sprint team did, maybe in a previous design sprint, versus the prototyping and testing CX and UX pros did in a version 2 design sprint. They're not going to look the same. Show in a meeting the difference between the customer journey maps and personas that the design sprint team guessed at in a previous design sprint versus the task analysis and optimized task flow qualified CX and UX researchers did in a version 3 design sprint. They're not going to look the same. Show in a meeting how your information architecture and interaction design utilize principles of cognitive psychology and human behavior. Your wireframes are not going to look like what comes out of design sprints. Tell that story. Show how yours are accessible, truly take customer knowledge and understanding into account, and would do well in a heuristic evaluation. Show how you are keeping the customer from making mistakes and running into my 4 horsemen of bad UX, registered trademark: frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction. Don't hold meetings just for this. That will look like evangelism. Work it into design sprint outcomes or the like so that nobody sees it coming. Now you're telling a story. After running design sprints versions 2 and or 3, you have the gateway drug to my ideation workshop. Design sprints version 1 minus what experts do in version 2 minus what experts do in version 3 literally only leaves get everybody together to try to understand the problem and then have them sketch screens. Instead of sketching, you'll just come up with ideas. People love things with names. You can tell them it's a Delta CX ideation workshop. Boom! Unqualified teammates are no longer playing junior interaction design patrol. Nobody's voting on concepts to push our favorite one to customers. We will test and choose design concepts as we have successfully for decades. Paul says, case study, I have business cohorts that assume everyone that downloads our app is a genuine user. They want to expose all our business intelligence, but fail to understand our competition is out there too. Their motives are good. Yikes. Back to the article. And please get rid of design thinking, whatever it means this week. I'm not even going to go into how design thinking has become a religion, something with so many gods and interpretations. Everybody is right or wrong at the same time. We had fun with this one in my video podcast episode 108, What Isn't Design Thinking? I also have more details in episode 50 from mid-2020, Design Thinking Has Jumped the Shark. Short version. If you are evangelizing, sharing, training, etc. design thinking, you are not promoting CX or UX. You are not helping people understand CX or UX. Solomon says, voting on concepts, how does that even work? Well, in these workshops, you put these sticky notes up and then people get markers or little dots and they go around and put dots on their favorite ideas and we count up the winner and that's our new product. Boom, American Idol. Okay, so back to the article. But Deb, without these workshops, we're siloed and nobody will have empathy. That's the short version of the negative comments I'm seeing about this article on LinkedIn, so let's address those. If we shift away from facilitating or being part of workshops, won't this put us into silos? This tells me that all of the propaganda coming from aspirologies is working. Design thinking, design sprints, and lean UX hinted or told you bluntly that they were the best ways to collaborate. Without them, you were not really collaborating, you're not going to get alignment, or you were in silos. It sounds like many people just believed that without critical thinking. With critical thinking, we would understand that collaboration is a spectrum. On one left end of the spectrum, we have zero collaboration and everybody in silos. People who are working on the same product but are in different domains within our company never talk and never meet. The work is never discussed, the research is never shared, assuming it was even done, and engineering never sees finalized architecture or designs before CX or UX is handing them off. On the right side of the spectrum, we can't do anything ourselves. Everything is a team effort, a group exercise, a workshop. That appears to be one of the messages of the Lean UX book. In order to not be siloed and to really be collaborators, we must do everything as a team. I can quote you chapter and verse from the Lean UX book that literally says that UX specialists should not be given any work, and every time you want to do something, get a product manager, an engineer, or more people to do it with them. On the right end of the spectrum, we can't make a decision without asking everybody else on the team what they think or what they prefer or what we should deliver to customers. We have no autonomy and power, and we don't seem to want any. If you believe that this article suggests that we do zero or much fewer workshops, I read that wrong. Take three. If you believe that this article's suggestions that we do zero or much fewer workshops will cause us to be siloed, then I would say, please put on your critical thinking hat. It sounds like you bought what the Asperologies are selling. There are so many ways to work with others without design by committee or being the only domain at our company that is democratized. Ralitza says, dots on stickies. I never liked this even when I was a scrum master and coach. Paul Edwards says, empathy my butt. I would say no thanks. And Kayleen said, who decided what is Design Sprint 1 versus 2 versus 3? So Design Sprint 1 was the original version that the Sprint book is written about. And then other facilitators, people who make mountains of money doing design sprints, started coming out with their own variations because they found that having people do some of these things that should be left to experts wasn't producing the best results and outcomes. So they named them, version 2, version 3. They don't replace the previous versions. They're just other things. So you can actually Google like Design Sprints version 2, Design Sprints version 3. I don't think there's a Design Sprints version 4 yet, but let's see. Oh, wrong button. Design Sprints version 4. It's because I'm in a private browser. No, looks like version 4 doesn't exist, but version 3 does. There you go. So back to my article. Oh, Elijah says he can't hear the audio. Audio. No, it says it's working. Oh, it was his own Bluetooth. Okay. So let's go back to the article. So there are so many ways to work with others without design by committee or being the only domain at our company that is democratized. If we shift away from all these workshops, how will we create empathy? Who said you needed empathy? Here's an article by Don Norman who said he doesn't believe in empathic design. You can Google that. Somebody with something to sell you convinced you that everything revolves around empathy. They sold the books, training, design thinking, and design sprints. They told you, just have empathy and just create empathy. What about people who don't have empathy? You've probably noticed that at your workplace, you're surrounded by people who barely care about customers. If anybody in our company had empathy or even sympathy, they wouldn't release crappy products and services to trial and paying customers. They wouldn't release the least viable thing they could possibly come up with and expect that to serve customers' needs and tasks. They wouldn't release guesses and then survey people months later to see what they think of that. Let's start with the idea that few people at your company have empathy or sympathy for customers. Then, with our critical thinking hats on and our egotistical hats off, let's realize that we can't make people feel more empathy. We can hope that they will understand customers better when we show them great qualitative research. We can hope that they are interested in improving the experience for these customers, but they're unlikely to do that without financial motivation, which is why we have to stop tying things to empathy. In a world of ROI and measuring customer behaviors and satisfaction, it makes us look touchy-feely, woo-woo. Most empathy at our companies is a lie. Where people think they have empathy for customers, very often, but not always, it's based on things they made up or assumed about customers, or it's based on a stereotype they have around certain customer types or groups. I also believe that this heavy reliance on everything must revolve around empathy whispers at discrimination against the neurodiverse. Certainly not all, but some autistic people have low empathy or no empathy. Are we saying that people who do not truly exhibit empathy and feel with customers should not work on our products or in our companies? Are you sure you want to make everything rely on empathy? Also, what's your definition of empathy? I cared about customers isn't empathy, it's sympathy. You know this because it sounds like the sympathy card we give when someone's cat dies. I'm so sorry your cat died is a pretty close cousin of, I'm sorry to hear that our customers are having trouble paying their bill online. But having empathy or sympathy doesn't automatically mean that we care to investigate the problem correctly or that we're solving it with the right execution of the right idea. Someone feeling empathy or sympathy isn't guaranteed to have correct user knowledge thanks to deep and correctly executed qualitative research. They're not guaranteed to take any action or the right actions that will drive customer satisfaction. This is another reason why we have to shift away from using these words. They have become meaningless. I think empathy is nice to have. In the book I wrote in 2019, Delta CX, I said it was important, but since then I've realized it's not as important as I thought. I will remove that from the future second edition of the book. Great UCD work can be done by people without empathy. Great products can be built at companies who don't feel for their customers. It's all about the knowledge we can generate through proper research and the actions we choose to take based on that research. So before we get to the closing of the article, we have a few comments. Paul doesn't believe in empathic design. Neither did Steve Jobs if you really think about it. Solomon says, so who's held responsible when design concepts fail to solve customers' problems? The person who introduced the idea or everyone who voted for it? Ralitsa says, unfortunately, usually the blame is transferred on the person least guilty. Yeah, so I have found that because nobody wants to take the blame for these things, nobody gets blamed. There's no accountability. I've just rewritten my Stop Evangelizing UX talk, and I'll be doing it Wednesday at Concentric. You'll see it on the YouTube channel. If you miss Concentric, I completely rewrote Stop Evangelizing UX, and I talk about how accountability is going to be key. I wonder if that's in here a little bit too. I don't remember. So back to the article. Or we can keep doing little to nothing about any of this. We can dismiss my ideas as petty and vitriol and a polemic. We can pretend that fixing UX is an emotional issue for me, assign this article emotions it doesn't have, and tone police the heck out of me. I grew up in a family of lawyers and learned quickly that if you want to present information, it had to be factual and unemotional. Yet people read what I write and imagine all kinds of emotions. It's easy to target the tone and say little about the content. And it's amazing how male authors known for their strong perspectives, some perspectives even stronger than mine, rarely get the tone policing or emotions assigned to their writing. But that's another article. If we are supposed to be change agents, then do something. If you're unhappy with the low maturity, aka lack of customer centricity at your company, if you're unhappy with your job, if you're unhappy with crappy customer outcomes, but you want to blast my article for a vibe you didn't like, then please write your own article on how we solve this. I would like everybody who sees the problems in our industry but didn't like my article to please write their own. Do something. Speak up. Stand up. Stop going along with the bullshit at our companies and jobs. You don't have to agree with me, but you have to do something. What are you doing other than posting to LinkedIn that Debbie is petty or putting words in my mouth that help you crap on this article? More design thinking doesn't solve this. You've been trying that for years now and it hasn't worked. More agile didn't solve that. We've been trying that for years now and it's not working. More evangelism won't solve this. We've been trying that for decades and it's not working and possibly backfiring. We have to undo what's undoing UX or it will undo us further. I know zero people who believe that the UX industry is in a good space. I know zero people who are happy with having to fight our companies to be understood or utilized. You don't have to love my article, but you have to do something. Speak up and do something. Also, don't forget my 8-hour training on HR, totally free. deltacx.academy. So that is the article. And shifting back to a giant picture of me with crazy hair, let's take a look at what's been going on in the chat room. Let's see. Paul Edwards says, you say polemic, and I don't even think I'm pronouncing that right, and only designer would know what that means. I got accused of that recently on LinkedIn by someone who read this article, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and edit my article and mention that. Kayleen says, your hair is fine. I know, those looks crazy to me. Paul says, I might have some typos in my article. Yeah, I usually do. I proofread them for days, and then I still have typos, but, I'm imperfect. Ralitza says, Deb is also on point, also because usually the decision is made way up the ladder and you can't really challenge it. Yeah, this is a problem at so many different levels. And that's why I'm going to be pushing more and more for us to stop the evangelism and stop the workshops and to focus more on trying to talk about and shepherd customer centricity and accountability. That's what my talk will be about on Wednesday. And no, I'm definitely not perfect. Thank you, Paul. You're just, you're covering me in butter, as we say. So I think that the key to this is going to be customer centricity and accountability. And what I'll be talking about on Wednesday is how that's much easier to push or promote or evangelize, though I'm against evangelism, because every company claims to care about customer satisfaction. They claim they want to be customer-centric. They claim they want accountability. No company claims they don't care about customers and they don't want accountability. They all pretend they do. So if we can find ways to puzzle piece our messages and our work into that, I think we have a much better shot than, hey, UX is really important. Don't you care about customers? Hey, let's put sticky notes on a wall and show how important design is. Okay, so that being said, we've got a few more minutes left. If there's anything anybody wants to say, let's get it out there. Disagreements are welcome. Improvements to what I said, suggestions, comments, questions. Otherwise, we can certainly wrap up a few minutes early. My allergies aren't too bad today because it rained a little. How are you guys? So yeah, any thoughts on this? We're probably delayed 14 seconds, so I'll let everybody say something. Paul says he has got something interesting going on where he's working now, and I should ask him privately. Paul, how about you just write to me privately and tell me so that I don't have an errand to run where I now have to ask you? How about that? UX! Let's be proactive. Just write to me and tell me. Thank you. Oh yeah, there it goes. The icons are working. Thank you, Paul. Kayleen says, when I argue this, I think people see me as unempathic. Joel Barr says, well, hello there. Hi, Joel. You might be late if you just got here. And Kayleen, who cares what anybody thinks about you? Who cares if somebody thinks you're empathic, not empathic, People on LinkedIn said I was petty and this was vitriol. Part of, we've got episode, what was it, 61? That was on resilience. You just have to let this stuff bounce off you. I tell people, even if they mean it personally, don't take it personally. These are all arguing tactics. And I noticed that as soon as people do ad hominem, which is a personal attack against you when the topic or of discussion was not you personally, as soon as I notice that people make it about me or what they think I'm feeling or thinking or whatever, then that's when I realize, oh, okay, they don't want to argue my points. They want to distract from the argument by trying to make it about me. Now I'm not going to argue the points. I'm going to start defending myself. And I just don't take the bait. I just say, this is a game. I write them back. I say, this is a game. You're trying to put me on the defensive and make it about me personally. I'm not playing. Try it harder. Ralitsa says, I think the biggest issue here is indeed accountability. Hierarchy has become a funnel to blame downwards and decide without proximity to the problem. Right. Well, I'm hoping that Ralitsa and I will solve that later this year. Wouldn't that be nice? Elijah says, thus design doing rather than just thinking. Show, don't tell. And in business, you show through results, not sticky notes. Amen, Elijah. I know half of that was quoted from Don Norman's talk the other day. But yeah, you got to show through results, not sticky notes. Joel Barr says, been listening on girlfriend's phone. She learned so much from you. She's a Scrum mistress, forging her into a UXer by grace. I don't know if that's an upgrade or not. Ask Ralitsa. Paul says, I agree. Don't presume you can put me in a little fence with your stupid empathy thing. Solomon says, if you ask most UX teams, you'll get the politically correct answers. Yes, we do research. Yes, the insights drive product decisions. But I find this is rarely the case. What's with the disconnect? Well, I think the good question. I think the answer to that is this is like I think they're giving you the fantasy. I think they're hoping if they say the fantasy out loud, it will become the reality. I remember someone I knew did that when they were in an unhappy marriage. They would always say like, yes, everything's going great and he's this and that and that. And then all of a sudden she was filing for divorce. And I was like, what just happened? And she was like, oh no, he was kind of crappy all along. I just figured if I said these things, maybe they'd come true. I don't have that sound. Darren does. I think people wish they were doing this, or maybe they're doing the tiniest micro bit of almost research and trying to console themselves by saying, well, at least we're doing some research. So, I think it would also help in what Solomon's saying. I think it would help for us to be more honest with ourselves and go, yep, I'm not doing research. I'm not really doing the right research the right way with the right people. I should really say that out loud instead of, oh yeah, we're doing research and we're so research data informed. Ralitsa says, what I had in a few organizations is the product organization, high management tier is making decisions, pushing them downwards, and then they blame the product managers. Why did you F it up? Yeah, many companies I've worked at claimed the product manager had ultimate accountability for the product manager had accountability. But then when everything went wrong and the feature was a failure and we had to actually undo it or turn the switch off or something, they were never in any trouble. So, what is that accountability even look like? Which is another good question. What does accountability look like? I'm not saying these people have to be immediately fired, but I'm saying if somebody starts to have a track record of disaster projects or features that always need fixing and rework or heavy customer support tickets or whatever, maybe eventually you rack up paperwork on these people and you let them go. I mean, I know this is an unpopular thing to say, but I think if a UX worker is doing a bad job at their job and they're getting the time and money and resources to do a good job, which is the big if, because we rarely do. But let's say in a dream world, we were getting the time and money and resources to do a good job. If you are doing a bad job, if you are bad at this, I kind of want you fired. I don't want imposters working in this. I don't want fake it until you make it working in this. But if we're not giving people what they need to do a good job, and then we're not checking if they did a good job or not, we continue hiring and keeping fake it until you make it people, and they're getting promoted. Some of them are even writing to me. I'm now director of CX and I know I failed up. And I'm just like, this isn't good. Why'd you do it? Solomon says, I've noticed a few experienced practitioners throw their hands up at the first sign of pushback from product managers or developers on the basis of it's too hard or it's going to take too long or we needed this yesterday. Yeah, it's tough. I think a lot of people have given up. Their power is gone, their autonomy is gone, and they can't get that power back. If people are telling us what to do and how to do it, and you get this long to do it, we don't have power or autonomy. Think about my world in my own agency. In my own agency, people come to me with projects and problems and things to improve, and I say, here's how much time I need, here's how much money I need, and here's how many people I'm going to put on it, and here's what else I need. And they either say, okay, or they say no. And so, but that's not happening at companies. Nobody's asking us what we need to do our best job. They're saying, UX, you draw pretty screens. Can you get me something final tomorrow? No, I want to do this. Paul says, my product manager defines my design. Yeah, well then you are, hypothetically, are you a production designer? So that's the message I'm trying to get out there. If we have no power and autonomy, if we are a pair of hands or order takers, if we are just building what the product manager says or just building what the business analyst wrote into the requirements, we are the new production designers. And if you are watching this channel, you don't want to be a production designer. I know you don't. If you're watching another channel, you might be happy to be a production designer, just take orders, make some money, whatever. But if you're here, you don't want to be a production designer. You are a change agent and a low ego action hero. So this doesn't work for us. Paul says, I don't let wrong to happen on my watch. I don't know what that is. Paul says, I don't draw anything pretty. Yeah, but it sounds like you're also being dictated and driven by your product manager. So, but again, this is common. I worked 2 years at Macy's and I wasn't allowed to do anything original from my own head. I was pretty much told, rip off this competitor, rip off that competitor, and just get us something in 2 days so engineering can build it. These are happening at all the big companies too, big companies, small companies. That's why we have to stand up and say something. This has become the norm and it shouldn't be the norm. Normalize what we're supposed to be doing, not what they think we're stuck doing. Pushpendra says, can I work with you? No, I'm not accepting applications at this time. I do not have any open jobs, so you would not be able to apply for any job working with me because they don't exist. So there you go. Solomon says, time to get the pitchforks. I really do think so. I think that even if your pitchfork is verbal, just the act of saying something, the act of documenting something, we're not even doing that. We're just total doormats at many of our jobs. At least I documented the hell out of stuff at Macy's. And that was good fun because it was just, it was 2 years. I have like nothing in my portfolio. It was 2 years of crazy crap and talking people out of bad ideas. I think that's pretty much how I spent those 2 years, documenting, talking people out of bad ideas. Joel says, Mary Poppins works alone. I actually don't. I work with some of the people in the chat room. I actually don't. I'm trying to work with more and more people than being the lone wolf I usually am, especially since now I can bring in apprentices and have them work with me. Solomon says, Kayleen asked, how do you identify this in job interviews? What are some obvious red flags? Oh, I'm sorry I missed that. Joel says, I know, it was for the funny. Obvious red flags from job interviews. It's hard because very often in job interviews, people aren't telling the truth. So I only try to ask questions where I think I might get the truth. So I don't ask like, what's your work culture like? Because nobody is going to say shitty, despicable, and will cause you to require medical leave. So I don't bother asking questions that I know aren't going to be the truth. I think it's better to ask questions like, what's your company's approach to researching with customers? How much time are researchers given to do their research? And if you're a designer, will I be able to work with the results from the research? And will engineering wait for that? Are we timing our project so that I have enough time to work from good research information before giving my designs to engineering? What UX process are we following? Are they going to say design thinking? Are they going to say nothing? Are they going to say what's a UX process? Are they going to say user-centered design? I think that's a very fair question to ask. What is the UX process here? And give me an example of how that's done. Bye, Paul. Be well. Flavio says, I've been fighting the output focus by delivering value with UX, showing results. It's been a successful experience so far. I hope so. Kayleen says, interviewers say, yes, we do research. Yeah, you've got to ask for more details on that. It's not, do you do research? So remember, this is like a great, UX research practice moment, you apprentices out there. You can't just say, do you do research here? Because remember, an engineer asking customers what do they want is seen as research. So who's doing research? How is research done here? Is the planning done so that research and UX have time to do their process before engineering is expecting to build this? Have we planned that? Or how much time does UX really get? I think these are all fair questions, and I think what is the process is a fair question. Solomon says they lie harder than a barn door after a hurricane. That's a good one. People like it. Yeah, that's why I try to only ask questions that I think are going to tell me a story that is more likely to be true. I also ask, who does this job answer to? And if it's a UX manager, who does the UX manager answer to? Is it another UX person, like a UX director? Or is it someone in product, engineering, marketing, IT? That tells me a little of the story as well. So yeah, that's some of that. So we're running out of time. Just a reminder, there will not be office hours this week because of Concentric. The next 3 days, that's where I will be glued. I hope you will be too. Today is the last day you can register for Concentric. Sorry, people in the future listening to this. There will be a Concentric next year, so maybe if you listen late enough in the future, this is true again. deltacx.com/Concentric. So sign up today. The registrations close just before midnight tonight, California time, and then you will not be able to register. Remember, tomorrow we will be in Air Meet, and you'll get an email just after midnight California tonight with how to get there, and the sessions will be in Zoom webinar, and those will be in the email as well, and in the Air Meet. So fingers crossed for our 3-day conference adventures. It's a much bigger undertaking than we did last year. Last year we did 1 day, 3 tracks, 18 speakers, 17 speakers. It was an intense day, and I was pretty worn out at the end. So this time we're doing it a little bit more spaced out, but we've got 7 tracks, 4 speakers per track. So we've got a lot of great sessions. Nearly all of them will be on YouTube probably in June once I can edit them. But some people did not want to be recorded, so I cannot guarantee they will all be on YouTube. Ralitza says, excited and crossing fingers. Me too. So everybody, I'm going to play us out of here, but be well, wear a lot of masks, wear your mask at Concentric. And right, Joel says, oodles of mentors like Joel. Sign up with Joel if you haven't already. And I guess I'll see everybody tomorrow in the Air Meet. That's going to start at 6 a.m. California time, which is luckily a nice normal awake time for me, 3 p.m. in Italy. I will be there. That's early networking before our sessions start. So thanks, everybody. Be well, and I'll catch you soon. Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation